Welcome to our presentation on Chapter 2 Analysis, Question and Answer by Ms. Keely Flowers and myself, Ms. Diane Jacobs.
What were the objectives of the colonial power? The primary objective of the colonial power was to maintain control over Belize and maintain British interests. How was this done? It was done in several ways. One, they established a colonial system where everything in Belize was done in a way to benefit Britain, and all the policies and education laws that were created in a way that Britain would benefit and not Belize directly. Two, a social hierarchy system where people maintained their status. The elite stayed elite and the bottom class stayed bottom class. By doing this, they maintained control over the population. Thirdly, and economic development. The main goal of the British colonial system was to develop British economy and to exploit Belize as much as they could in order to achieve this goal. And also literacy and health improvement. If they improve the literacy in Belize, they believe the health conditions would also improve because a lot of the population were illiterate. And by educating them, their objective was to improve the health system. And the fifth objective was to limit secondary education. As much as they wanted the population to be educated, they also did not want to educate them too much because when someone is educated they can make wiser and better decisions, and they did not want to open the eyes of the lower class population too much. Curriculum and content. The curriculum and content was basically based on literacy only, and one of the methods that they used was rote learning. Rote learning is memorization and repetition of knowledge. This was not meaningful to students, and as you know, memorization is not long term, and so students did not benefit a lot from this. A second one was practical orientation. There was a request for students to be trained in agriculture skills and practical skills that they could apply in the work field, but this was slow to come to fruition. Thirdly, language issues. So many of the students from the low class did not fully understand English, and this led to challenges in the classroom in terms of them understanding what was being taught to them, because like today the lessons were taught in English, and because their English skills was not as good as those in the higher class, it didn't make learning an easy process for them. Terminal education, like stated before, they focus mainly on primary education and not on secondary education, and the focus on this was primarily to control the population. Access and equity. The education system was not equitably distributed throughout the country of Belize during British colonial power. Some of the factors that contributed to this inequality was one, financial barriers. There were imposed fees on entering schools, and families from low status could not afford to attend. So, of course, those in higher status had access to education, and also compulsory education limitations. The policies were implemented to make education compulsory, but this was only focused in Indian communities, and focus was not made in other communities. A second one is geographic disparities. Similar to my previous point, schools were not spread out throughout the entire country, where rural communities were neglected, and which led to my last point, cultural exclusion. Certain cultures did not have access to education, which led to alienation of certain cultures, which caused certain children to not receive the quality of education like their peers.
So now let's describe the long-term effects of the colonial educational policies. The long-term effects of the colonial educational policies in Belize have been profound and lasting. The first point we have is the social inequality. The entrenched social divisions created by the educational system have persisted. It has contributed to ongoing disparities in access to education and economic opportunities. Second, we have the cultural alienation. The focus on the British-centric education has led to the marginalization of local cultures and languages, impacting national identity and cohesion. Thirdly, we have the limitation of opportunities. The colonial approach to education limited students' opportunities for personal and professional development, which resulted in a workforce that was not fully equipped to meet the demands of a post-colonial economy. And fourth, we have the continued challenges. The legacy of these policies has contributed to ongoing challenges in the Belizean education system, including the issues of quality, access, and equity that require significant attention and reform. How can I describe the teacher recruitment and training? Well, teacher recruitment and training during the colonial period were characterized by significant deficiencies, which are the lack of training institutions. There were no formal training institutions for teachers, which meant that many teachers were inadequately prepared for their roles in the classroom. Two, the pupil-teacher system. The reliance on the pupil-teacher system was insufficient due to inadequate supervision and ineffective teaching methods. Three, the low salaries and standards. The teaching profession suffered from low salaries and a lack of established salary scales, making it difficult to attract qualified individuals into the teaching profession. And four, the awareness of deficiencies. Despite recognition of the need for better training and recruitment practices by colonial authorities, financial constraints often hindered the meaningful reforms.
I hope you all enjoyed our presentation and you are able to learn one thing about Belize education system during British colonial power.